Jananim Sharadam Devim Ramakrishnam Jagadgurum Padapadme Tayo Shritva Pranamami Muhurmuhu Namashri Yatirajaya Vivekananda Suraye Satchit Sukhasvarupaya Swamine Tapaharine. Our humble salutations to Sri Ramakrishna, Holy Mother Sharda Devi, Swami Vivekananda, and all the saints of the world. My dear devotees, today, as you all know that, we are having a special lecture on Vedanta and Sri Ramakrishna and how this Vedanta is practiced in Sri Ramakrishna order. So these are the 2 points. The most learned, revered Swami Shantatmananda Maharaj, Secretary, Ramakrishna Mission, New Delhi, India. Swamiji has accepted our invitation and he has graced us. Today he will be addressing us. Swamiji, more than 4 decades, he is the monk of the Ramakrishna order and also is leading his spiritual life. And in the Belur Math, in the Provident Fund department, he was there. And he was instrumental in many workers, poor people, to get the Provident Fund for all the poor people who are working in Ramakrishna Math and Mission. And also he has done a lot of charitable activities. Even now he continues to help the widows, poor women, and especially children who are deprived of, who comes from deprived classes. And for them, now also he helps them to continue or to pursue their education. And again, Swamiji has created one more landmark in India, that he has created a beautiful modules for values education. We all speak of value education, erosion of values and all. We all keep speaking. But Swamiji has brought a beautiful modules based on our Indian wisdom, Swami Vivekananda's ideas, and other philosophers' idea. He has created beautiful modules, workshops, and also notes are notebooks, workbooks are available for higher primary students. And all over the India, the principals and the teachers of the schools are also trained. And now values education has been imparted in many schools at primary level and also at higher primary level. Swamiji is instrumental in that. And of course, he has invited by many countries, for many centers and UNICEF and etc. Some of the organizations where he had given scholastic lectures, and he has attended many TV interviews, and he regularly writes articles. Such a great scholarly monk we are having. So I humbly, on behalf of Éire Vedanta Society, Swami Purnanji, and all the devotees assembled online and offline, I humbly, reverentially, I welcome Swamiji for this August gathering. And I request Swami Purnanji to give a bouquet and welcome him.
Purnanji is a very old friend. Together, how he not so old. Appreciate together how hard he worked. Those who are there, they know. Maharaj is his age itself is less than the time of stay in the monastery. So it seems once Ranganathanji said that for sadhus, that Swami is enough. That is the biggest title or the biggest introduction. Nothing is needed beyond. Because no, in our tradition, Swami means God actually. Swami is God. So monks are revered so much. So what else you need? What we did here and there, do they really count? Nothing. Anyway, it's nice of him. And Om Stapakaya cha dharmasya sarva dharma swarupine avatara varishtaya Ramakrishnaya te namaha Jananim Sharadam Devim Ramakrishnam Jagadgurum Padapadme Tayo Sritva Pranamami Muhormuhu Namashri Yatirajaya Vivekananda Suraye Satchit Sukhasvarupaya Swamini Tapaharini. Our very, very dear Swami Purnanandji, our very dear Swami Shantivrtanandji, and the assembled devotees. It's a small gathering, but Jesus had only 12 disciples and Thakur 16. So So we don't have to worry about the numbers. Once it seems somebody said on a Sunday class in Delhi also there is a Sunday class in the one small premises, the Delhi University. For years from Raghunathanji's time. So Buddhananji once he went one day because there were hardly. So he said, no, don't worry. After all, Sri Krishna gave to only one person the Gita. Arjuna was the only listener. Huh? So at least we have many more. Huh? What is there? So that's not important. Actually, all these are all, it's more for oneself. For example, I look upon all these as great opportunities because, you see, I was more than 30 years at the Belur Math, and I was so busy with, I was looking after very critical departments like audit, finance, and then labor laws, this and that. See, wherever you put me, I just go and get immersed there. So I did not have, in 30 years, I think for the first 25 years, I never spoke. And in the last 5 years, somebody literally forced me. He said, no, you can't be like this. You have to start. You're a senior monk now. So I was doing 2 classes in Bengali per month. That was my experience of speaking before coming to Delhi. And suddenly, from the frog of the well into the frog of the sea, said you go and I have to speak in Hindi, English, and Bengali, 3 languages. So when God helps you, everything happens. At least 25 years, I have 15, 16 years I'm there. We didn't have to close anything. No, I've kept the lamp burning. That's that is Mother's grace. So I find that, I was thinking, he has given this topic. So now, at least I have to think about on those lines very specifically. So these are all opportunities for self-culture. That's how I take it. From 2 classes a month in Bengali to some 25 programs per month in different languages. So it has been a different type of a journey. So it's good. Let us sit, let us talk, let us discuss. You can also ask questions if you feel. But this center has a great significance, and all of you are extremely fortunate because it never happens like this. In such a short notice, they have fast-tracked Dublin and created a center here. 25 years, 30 years, people struggle, and then slowly it happens. They themselves, Janseti Maharaj himself wrote to all the centers in UK, etc., to send money and this and that. But personally, I feel that in a very small way, we have repaid the debt which the nation owes to Sister Nivedita. See, very unfortunately, even in our freedom struggle, nowhere we find the mention of Sister Nivedita's name. So we owe her a deep debt of gratitude, starting from Aurobindo's escape up to how many of the freedom fighters were saved by her because she had her Scottish origin, and then obviously from Ireland. So obviously she had a good voice. English, they wouldn't harm her or arrest her or anything. And using her influence, she had helped enormously that way. So not only that, a person who came and virtually died for India. You see, if you want to come to India, you must love India. Swamiji's one condition. And here is a person who virtually died. Just as Swamiji gave his life in trying to serve the nation, literally she followed her Guru's footsteps. Because how many days she was about to take her breakfast, and 2 widow children would come. Their very faces would say that they have not had anything. Immediately she would give away. Day after day like that. Sheer malnutrition, not caring for her health. She died. She was just 44. So obviously, it's something as a nation we owe this debt to her. So although otherwise this would not have really come up like this, in that sense, this has very great significance, and I think we should have Nivedita's programs also, so that people understand and why this is so important and why this center was started so quickly. Anyway, that's beside our topic. Today, our Shantivrtanji wanted me to speak on the idea Sri Ramakrishna and Vedanta. Because it's a very vast subject, we'll not have so much time. But let me try to approach it this way. See, during this talk, we will look at 3 incidents very specifically, and also overall philosophically where do we stand, and so on and so forth. You see, to be very clear, we come under the Dasanami Sampradayas of Shankaracharya. We also have the same title, Puri. Our sannyasa is also with the Mahavakya, same laws, same this thing. So clearly we belong to the Dasanami Sampradaya. So as an organization, as an order, our philosophy is Dasanami Sampradaya established by Shankaracharya. So Swami Vivekananda once went to Mayavati Advaita Ashrama, and he was shocked to see that the sadhus and brahmacharis keeping Thakur's photo, offering flowers and showing, waving dhoop sticks, etc. He was so angry. And he can be really ruthless when he gets angry. So he said, this old man has come here also. Remove all that. So nobody dare, when he is in his elements, no one can go anywhere near him. In fact, they say in mud, if he is in the eastern side, they will all in the western side. When he will get angry and scold, they were afraid. So immediately they quickly removed all that. But then they were not convinced. So they wrote to Holy Mother. You see, Swamiji is saying like that, but can we not worship Sri Ramakrishna, who is our Ishta Devata, or something like that? Because Swamiji was very clear. He said that at least let there be one ashrama totally devoted to the pursuit of Advaita Vedanta. Particularly, he was thinking about the Western disciples who would find it a little cumbersome to worship these images and go through rituals and so on and so forth. That's why, all his talks, the 4 years in the West, I think he spoke only twice about Sri Ramakrishna in the entire 4 years period. And largely it was all out and out Vedanta, Advaita Vedanta of the highest order. There was the sum and substance of his talks. So when they wrote to Mother, Mother replied, yes, Naren to tiki boleche baba. Naren has spoken correctly. She is very significant, the words she used. Thakur to Vedanta chilin. Sri Ramakrishna was Vedanta. She never said that Sri Ramakrishna followed Vedanta or the follower of Vedanta. She said Sri Ramakrishna was an embodiment of Vedanta. Murta Vigraha. So obviously I don't think we need to go beyond that to understand where our basic drift is, in which direction, and what we really stand for. Obviously we stand for the Vedanta of the highest order. So clearly she put a stamp there and said that we are that. And as per the tradition set up by the organization, we are following the Dasanami Sampradaya, Shankara Vedanta, etc., etc. So, does it mean that we are exactly that? Or is it something else? This is a huge debate that would go for maybe, I don't know, for centuries. Because even now, as on date, no one has been able to explain exactly right the philosophy of Sri Ramakrishna. Because it seems like a unfathomable ocean, the depth of his ideas, the philosophy, whatever he said, that book, The Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, probably that contains everything one can imagine as far as the Vedanta is concerned, all dimensions, all aspects. So is it all, did we follow only exactly the Shankara Vedanta as it is understood? Definitely there are nuances which are very specific, very special. Of course, I am not really competent to interpret it exactly like that, but I'm only sharing what my feelings are, my thoughts are, because it's too vast, too difficult a subject. One of our scholarly Swamis wanted to classify this as a Shakta Advaita. Ramakrishna's philosophy is Shakta Advaita. He was a great scholar. Then some people said that no, this is Vishishta Advaita. All that. Anyway, so if you of course go through Swamiji, etc., thoroughly, you will get a better and better idea. But again, you know, these a couple of incidents would really throw more light on what exactly Sri Ramakrishna wanted, what it was. You see, for example, if you go through the chapter on in the Leela Prasanga, the most authentic biography of Sri Ramakrishna, if you read the portion Vedanta Sadhana, you will be stunned. There is very little of the traditional Vedanta Sadhana there. It's all a huge mix of yoga and so many other things. See, because in the traditional Vedanta, there's nothing called Samadhi or this or that. They don't believe in all that. The original, the hardcore Kattarpanthi Advaita Vedantins, for them the only thing is Vichara, discrimination, Neti, negating everything which is not Brahman and coming to that idea that Brahman alone ultimately. But Sri Ramakrishna, that's why, you know, we talk about Sri Ramakrishna as a harmonizer of various religions. Not only that, in Hinduism itself, he brought about a huge plethora of harmonies and so many aspects. You know, Sri Ramakrishna and harmony itself can be a different topic, because there are so many harmonies which he brought about. One of which was reconciling the various aspects of Vedanta. See, unfortunately, Vedanta literally means the end portion of the Vedas. So Vedanta slowly has come to be identified with Advaita Vedanta alone. But Visishtadvaita is also Vedanta. Madhvacharya's Dvaita is also part of that. But slowly over the years we have come to identify Vedanta as only Advaita Vedanta. I think probably this is one of the extraordinary contributions of Sri Ramakrishna, where he harmonized and brought into his fold of Vedanta all the aspects, everything that is possible. So not only the Visishtadvaita and Dvaita, he also brought yoga also into it. Of course, in his life he also did go through all the 64 tantras disciplines, whatever was necessary. But in his idea, in his harmony of Vedanta, clearly he has brought in a lot of the ideas of yoga up to the Nirvikalpa Samadhi. Because you see, this is where Thakur Man Swamiji, they clearly, kind of took a break from the traditional thing. Because in the traditional Advaita Vedanta, the sadhana is to neti you say, and that vichara is all that you are supposed to do. But that vichara, is it only at the level of the intellect? Where does it stop? See, I can also discuss with you, but where does it take you, and what is the ultimate of that? Because Sri Ramakrishna, one of his dear disciples, that Swami Turiyananda, he was Hari at the time. He was a great follower of the traditional school of Vedanta. So he was poring over those books, and he had even kind of stopped coming to Sri Ramakrishna. So Sri Ramakrishna is not a person to let anyone go. That's why all of us are bound, we can't escape even if we want. So then he always would send word. So Hari came, "Arey, Vicky, naki खूप पढ़ছিস Vedanta, you are reading so much of Vedanta. তোমার Vedanta কি বলছে? ব্রহ্ম সত্য জগৎ মিথ্যা এই তো নাকি আর কিছু? What does your Vedanta say? That Brahman alone is real and everything else is illusory. Is there anything beyond that?" Hari was stunned. He has just summed up the entire essence of Vedanta, but Sri Ramakrishna's rider there gives an idea of his inclusiveness. See, he says, देखो तुम्हार नीति नीति करते गेलियो ए जगतकार जागतिक जिनिस के निये तो तुम्हें करबे. See, even your discrimination that not this, for that you need the world. See, if the illusory part of it doesn't exist at all, where is the question of you are doing that vichara? So your vichara is also based on that which is to be negated ultimately. So you need that. See, these are all, extremely revealing statements of Sri Ramakrishna. Each one is of an extraordinary dimension. So that means what? There is a hint. The world is not to be completely thrown away as something worthless or useless. There can be a different ideation, different orientation, different way of accepting the world. All that would come as a later part of Sri Ramakrishna's sadhana. So, there is a hint of that there itself. So, although Sri Ramakrishna clearly saw, believed, experienced. So, he said that is why in the Ramakrishna Vivekananda tradition, religion is realization. Anubhuti ki baat. It is not just understanding it intellectually. That's why, people leading the most ordinary lives are the greatest logicians. See, to do this neti, it is enough if you have a very sharp intellect. Intellectually, you can keep on arguing like that and feel that I have come to that. But that is different from realization that they have consistently proved. Otherwise, you will not have a greatest jnani in the form of Adbhutaranda in the traditional school, because you would have been thrown away even in day one as a worthless student who cannot understand a word of Sanskrit. A person who was nirakshar, illiterate, being the highest kind of jnani, that is Sri Ramakrishna's Vedanta. See, in Kashi, Latu Maharaj and Shuddhananda was considered one of the brightest amongst the first generation of disciples. That's why Swamiji asked him to write the rules book. And he corrected it, of course, but it was written primarily by Shuddhanandaji. So both of them had gone to listen to a talk on Kathopanishad. And when that Pandit explained, Angushtamatra Purushontaratma Tada Hriday Sannivishta. So the Atman is like, like an Angushta, it's in the cave of the heart. Latu Maharaj jumped in joy. Sudhir, Pandit ठीक बोले छे, Pandit ठीक बोले छे. He has spoken correctly. And they were coming. Sudhir was going ahead. Latu Maharaj was behind. Every now and then doing their walk back to the ashrama. Sudhir, ki Maharaj, Pandit ठीक बोले छे. Pandit spoke correctly. Night, 12 o'clock. Somebody is knocking at Sudhir's room. 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, something. At this unearthly hour, who is knocking? Open. Latu Maharaj, Sudhir, Pandit ठीक बोले छे. See, it exactly tallied with his experience. So, this dimension of Vedanta is a unique contribution of Sri Ramakrishna. And following him, Mother and Swamiji, that religion is realization. See, I'm talking only from the bookish knowledge. I have not had samadhi. Please don't make it. See, the idea, when you really do that vichara, it culminates when the entire, when all the indriyas are completely quietened, then that manonash are completely that vritti nash. Yoga chitta vritti nirodha, that completely happens, and then only you get the highest idea of the Advaita. Otherwise, you see, I can do the greatest of vichara, and very next moment I can behave in a most earthly or an ordinary human being's way. That's possible. But once you reach that, when you come down, it can never be like that. That is why there is a there's a great scholar. He was considered a very brilliant person, Subramaniam Iyer. He was the person who started the Vedanta study circle in Mysore. Some of the great Swamis had been there. They were 1 or 2 years. They were there. They studied and they came back and all that. He started a theory: sleep equal to samadhi. See, because what happens in the waking state, all your indriyas are fully alive, fully awake. You participate, you do everything physically. Now in the dream, physically the limbs are all quiet, but the mind takes over, completely indulges in everything, and it's all going on. In the dreamless sleep also, all the things are quiet. Everything is gone. There is not even this mind. But there was that awareness. When you get up, you understand. Because you say that, I had a wonderful sleep. I slept well. I didn't know anything. Who is that is seeing that? That is that Atman or that self. That recognizes that Sakshi. So somewhere around, he was developing that. He was a very great scholar and he had written a book also about that. But normally some of our other great Swamis, they say that, see, the difference is, you go to sleep, you wake up the same fool as you were before. There's no change in you. But once you go to Samadhi, when you come back, you're a totally enlightened person. If you go to the highest kind of Nirvikalpa Samadhi, you're a totally different person when you come back. So, this idea, religion is realization. It is based on experience. That is an integral part of Ramakrishna's Vedanta. Now, coming back to those incidents, so Swamiji was constantly pestering him for Nirvikalpa Samadhi. He said, everybody has got experience, you have given everything to somebody. So Thakur asked him to teach us, what do you want? Tell me. He said, I want to remain absorbed in Samadhi all the time. And now and then come out to that condition, have a morsel of food, and again dive deep into Samadhi. Any other guru would have jumped with joy, but Sri Ramakrishna was totally disillusioned. He scolded him. See, what a narrow-minded person you are. I thought that you would become a huge banyan tree under which the shades of which thousands of scorched souls would take shelter. You are thinking of your own mukti. Don't you sing that song, Jo kuch hai so tu hai? You can see God only with closed eyes. Can you not see him with open eyes? These are all hints of the special idea of Swami, of Sri Ramakrishna, his unique contribution, value additions to the traditional Vedanta. See, in traditional Vedanta, it's very clear. Shankara also accepts work, particularly Nitya Naimitya karmas, for the purpose of Chitta Shuddhi. Then at one point of time, you should completely come away from work, and only through Jnana Nishtha, you get the highest. So you must completely dissociate. That is why in the sannyas hall they have this, you must just go away, pravrajet. You get that knowledge from that guru, simply you vanish into oblivion. You go into the forest, you go into the caves, you're completely lost to the world. That was the traditional idea. So Sri Ramakrishna and Swamiji completely turned it upside down. Here the hint of that, what's going to come, what's going to happen to Swamiji, there's a hint in this. Because Sri Ramakrishna clearly said he's a Dhyana Siddha. His gaming was meditation. We know of many incidents in his life. So Sri Ramakrishna clearly knew that getting the traditional Advaita knowledge and being immersed was just a child's play for Swamiji. But he didn't want him to go that path. He clearly said, no, this is not. Not only that, after he had his first Nirvikalpa Samadhi, Sri Ramakrishna said that now this treasure would remain locked and the key will be with me. You have to do mother's work. Then this treasure will be unlocked again. But Swamiji was not a person to take anything lying down. He was endowed with tremendous Purushaka. So after Thakur's Mahasamadhi, he went on a Bharat Brahman. He went to Ghazipur. He was so attracted by Pavari Baba's sadhana. He was a great yogi. He would remain absorbed in samadhi. Once in 3-4 days, 5 days, maybe even later, he would come out. No one saw him ever eating anything. There used to be a small window. Through that he would talk to people who had come for some advice. Swamiji again that stirred, again that Nirvikalpa Samadhi. Thakur gave him darshan 21 times. Everything was arranged. He would get initiated by Pavari Baba the next day. He was lying on a camp cot, open, just the sky above, nothing else, no roof. Suddenly he saw Sri Ramakrishna by his bedside. Sri Ramakrishna didn't talk, but his face was so sad. And he said many things without really expressing anything. And Swamiji had to give up the idea of getting initiated by Pavari Baba. In one biography, it is written this happened 21 times. And finally, Swamiji gave up the idea of getting initiated. And then he wrote to either his brother disciple or someone, Sri Ramakrishna has no peer. The world has not seen such depth of spiritual realization and at the same time such compassion for the suffering man. See, they're all slowly, if you add them all together, you get what was very special about Ramakrishna's Vedanta. It's not just the traditional Advaita Vedanta alone. It was all there, but he had made very significant contributions that way to give a different shade. So, not only that, one day in Sri Ramakrishna's room, there was a discussion about the Vaishnava philosophy. I don't know which classical text is available, but in the Vaishnava Vedanta philosophy, it seems there are 3 basic tenets. Name Ruchi, taste for the Lord's name. Jive Daya, compassion for the Jivas. And Vaishnava Seva, service of the Vaishnavas. So first he said, Name Ruchi, taste for the Lord's. And when Sri Ramakrishna pronounced the next sentence, Jive Daya, compassion to beings, he went into Samadhi. When he came down from that state, he said, Chi, Jive Daya? How can Jiva show compassion? Jiva is like a worm, so insignificant. No. Not Daya, but Seva. Shiv Gyan se Jeev Seva. Service of God in man. Sri Ramakrishna did not elaborate, but Swamiji did. So Swamiji says, each one of Sri Ramakrishna's statements can be deliberated, talked about for days together. Since somebody challenged him and he took for discussion free will versus grace. And for it seems 3 or 4 days he discussed that topic. So many were present, among them was also Narendranath. He said, today I have heard something new. Should God give me an opportunity, I will prove this before mankind. And he did. He did through the Ramakrishna mission which he established. So, if you see the lives of Thakur, Man, Swamiji, all this will be very, very clear. See how it is possible. So, so let us look a little more at the philosophical aspect as Ramakrishna did it. And then we can also see whether it is reflected in the life of Mother and Swamiji. Because how this is possible, from the point of view of experience, whether it is possible, or accepting this idea as a sadhana, whether it is possible. See, any great truth, the highest ideas, have two aspects. One is as reflected in the lives of those who have realized those truths. They stand at the peak or at the pinnacle, and they are the ideals, they are the adarshas, they are the role models, they are the pole stars, so to say. Then ordinary people, they assume that attitude and practice it as sadhana. What is realization for them is the path of sadhana for ordinary people. That's why Gita says, Yadyat acharati shesha tatyeva itaro jana sayat pramanam kurute lokas tadanu vartate. What the extraordinary people have done and achieved is the path for ordinary mortals. So, Sri Ramakrishna had the highest Nirvikalpa Samadhi. He was immersed in it for months, 8 months or so. There was no way he would have survived. For days he had no sleep. His eyelids would not close. That was his condition. It is said that one wandering monk used to come and with a small stick he would beat him and push a couple of morsels of food into his mouth, and that is how he survived. So Totapuri, when he saw him, when he initiated him, Sri Ramakrishna said, no, I cannot give up my mother. Whenever I concentrate, her enchanting form that appears, I cannot. He took a piece of glass and pierced the eyebrows, that space, and said, concentrate here. And when mother's form appeared, it is written that he cut it into two using the sword of knowledge. Gyan ashidiye dubhag. It's not possible to interpret this. What it is, he only knows. But he soared into Nirvikalpa Samadhi. And he wouldn't come down. When Totapuri saw 3 days and 3 nights, then with great difficulty he brought him back. And he said, what took me 40 years, he has done in 3 days. Actually, Totapuri is wrong. It's not 3 days. In a matter of an hour or so it happened. He remained in that state for 3 years. It did not take him 3 days to reach there. The moment he decided it is going to happen this way, immediately he was immersed in Nirvikalpa Samadhi. So, then normally such people do not live. They go away. But then for the Loka Sangraha, like people like Shankaracharya and others, they continue to live with a particular attitude. But they never compromise. Shankara never always, he was that idea that he was in the world, but he was always of the view of the established philosophy that Brahma Satya Jagat Mithya. But Sri Ramakrishna had a different aspect to this. He said, he brought in this concept of Vijnana, which again is something totally new, the way he said it. Because if you look at it in a little lesser light, it might appear like Visishtadvaita, but it's not that, it's beyond that. Because Visishtadvaita doesn't accept the ultimate Advaita at all, it stops before that. But Sri Ramakrishna had traversed the path, gone up to that and come to this level. So what he says, he always talks in parables, in examples which are most commonplace, which every person can relate to. He says, you climb the stairs. While climbing the stairs, the steps, etc., you have to constantly negate that this is not the terrace, this is not the terrace, this is not the terrace, because your goal is to reach the terrace. And once you reach the terrace, then the knowledge dawns on you that the terrace is made up of the same materials as the steps, namely mortar, brick, etc. And then when you come down, that realization is perfect in you. You never lose track of that. Constantly you are aware that the steps are made up of the same material as the terrace. It's a very small example, but again, this can be talked about for hours, so to say. First of all, Sri Ramakrishna himself says that when you go to the terrace, you can see, look around, but you can't constantly live in the terrace. You have to come down. So this is Sri Ramakrishna. So you can go there. If you get the highest realization, you realize, but if you continue to live in the body, see, you can jump from there and commit suicide from terrace, but if you want to come back to the house, you have to come via the stairs. You have to take the same path which you used to ascend to descend. See, these are all left unexplained. These are not stated anywhere, but these are all hidden there. See, the steps you descend are the same which you ascended. This is a very important aspect of this knowledge of Vijnana. You come down the same steps. So when you do that, you don't lose that highest knowledge which you gained by reaching the terrace. So even when you are in the world, when you come back, you retain that highest knowledge and you participate in the world in a totally different way. It's a very extraordinary revelation and extraordinary contribution to the idea of Advaita itself, and linking it to the daily life. You see, Sri Ramakrishna, before the highest biblical samadhi, he stayed in the temple, the vessels, the clerks, the prasada, everything was there. When he came back also, he lived. Were there any change in the external world? No. They were all there. But his perception, his realization was totally different. And he never lost track of it. So you go to Calcutta, he will see a fallen woman standing. Oh, mother, you want to give me darshan in this form? Wonderful. He says, Balishir Bitardi Ukhi Marche. The Chaitanya is trying to peep out of the pillowcases. Says everything is like a pillowcase. I mean, the external covering is of various forms, but in and through, pervading them, they use a very beautiful term called Otaprata. In and through that consciousness. So we can vaguely try to imagine, that's all, nothing beyond that. So he was there, he used to love jalebis, he used to make fun, he used to cut jokes, but he was always, and apart from that, every now and then you really go back to that also to have that taste also. Being completely immersed in samadhi was also there, but he was not in samadhi also, he was not in a worldly condition. He was constantly in touch with that infinite, constantly in touch with consciousness. That was part and parcel of his life. So, he has given an extraordinarily new meaning to life and existence itself. Because this is how a person of the highest knowledge can live in an existential world. How does it affect you, me, and every individual? That's what Swamiji, when he established the Ramakrishna Sangha, he gave before it the idea, Atmano Mokshartam Jagat Hitaya. An ordinary person, an IAS officer, writing a judgment in our favor about Provident Fund, she mentioned all that. When they work in a school in Rahara, they only see the Narayanas there. Of course, we don't see. She was nice enough to say like that. So, in that is hidden the concept of extraordinary daily living. Whatever you do, you may fix the microphone, you may set up the YouTube, but that need not drag your mind down to worldliness. So what does it mean? That's why Swamiji said that even if a shoe shiner, if he shines the shoes perfectly, he's practicing the highest Advaita. Of course, I may not be quoting exact words. So Sister Nivedita wrote in her introduction to Complete Works, henceforth no more distinction between the sacred and secular. A very extraordinary statement. After Swamiji's talk at the World Parliament of Religion on Hinduism, it gave birth and yet a new dimension. Henceforth, no more distinction between the sacred and the secular. To worship and to pray as good as this is something like she goes on to add. So everything, what happens, so this really uplifts you enormously. I may be a cashier counting cash in the bank, but I need not be away from Advaita. I am not away from the highest idea of God. It's a struggle, constant struggle. While we do forget. We get into problems, we get into difficulties, but there is scope for course correction at every stage. You may be a housewife, serving your husband, serving your children, but you can be an extraordinary Advaitin. Of course, it's all long ago proved when the brahmachari from the forest, after burning a bird which had dirtied him by his power of tapasya, it was burnt to ashes. When he went to the town to ask for bhiksha, when the lady asked him to wait, he got angry. He said, Baba, don't get angry, I am not the bird to be burnt. I will come after serving my husband. So it's all there in our tradition, but we had forgotten. That's why Swamiji said that Éire Vedanta Shahare Niyastha. The Vedanta of the marketplace is to be brought to the market, of the forest is to be brought to the markets. So everyday living can be an extraordinary experience of Vedanta. Our attempt, you see, sadhana is like that. Does anyone, even if you go to a forest, if you do only japa and meditation, does it guarantee that you are going to see God in 3 days? It may be a lifelong struggle. But Swamiji saw that there is a different meaning. When he was, that was his problem, his compassion. His compassion was his undoing. Otherwise, he need not have come down from Samadhi at all. His compassion was his weakness. His Bharat Parikrama, he saw that what has happened to this country. What is the way? Only way is through sannyasins. What is that? Atmano mokshartam jagati taja. Do everything. Service is integral part of your sadhana, but your goal is moksha. But the path is through this. So of course he has defined each soul is potentially divine. The goal is to manifest his divinity. You see, there also clearly the definition is Advaita. Each soul is potentially divine. That you are that consciousness, you are that ultimate. That is a goal. Know that, realize that. Goal is to manifest this. But again, the path he has given all the 4 yogas. He did not say that vichara alone is the only path. So what happens? In one swipe, one go, he has brought the entire humanity under this gamut of sadhana. Whatever you do can be a means of spiritual evolution for you, provided you have at least an idea of what you are trying to achieve, where you are going, what's your attitude, where you should go ultimately, how should all that, how should your sitting and giving a talk, how should really impact you at a deeper levels of personality, what do you gain from that? So every action of ours, if you have that, that is why he said, unless you combine all the 4 yogas, you are not cast in the mold of Sri Ramakrishna. So it's also an inviolable law, because every yoga would automatically bring in some form or other, every other yoga. Supposing you are into this extraordinary idea of karma yoga, trying to reach there, unless you have the tremendous devotion to the person you are serving, you are not going to serve properly. So bhakti comes. Unless there is an intense concentration, focus, Raja Yoga, you will not serve. Unless you discriminate what is right, what is wrong, you will do it haphazardly. So jnana comes in. So every yoga dovetails into one yoga ultimately. So there is a combination. But if you knowingly, consciously, deliberately do it, this thing will be faster. So much so, every endeavor, even the most ordinary endeavors of life, can become means of sadhana. That is what they have extraordinarily added to this idea of Vedanta, Thakur Ma and Swamiji. Otherwise, if you look at mother's life, morning to night, she was worse than the maids in India. From 3 to night 11, cooking, cleaning, feeding, cooking, cleaning, feeding. One after another. 3 to 11. You will call her a Brahmagyani. But people know. We are close by, would understand. Someone would come and say, oh, apni to radhu radhu korchen, abdekshi ato atta ham, abba amra to mohila ki korbo, abra me amra. Should say we are women, we are like that. But when those who are close, they will understand. How she combined, just 2 small incidents. Once the brothers Kali and Varda were fighting so much about taking the cart with the hay, etc., or even the of the harvest paddy. Terrible fight, almost they were coming to blows. One brother she would pull and he will quite it. Then another. Like that constantly it was going on. Finally, after a long time, she managed to separate them. And then he came, she sat on the veranda and started laughing. Attahasi. That laughter, her whole face, her whole physical appearance changed. Sara jagat pode ache. Erat act jumi niye. The whole world, who is going to carry after death? And nobody dared go anywhere near her. It took a long time for her to come back to the normal plane. In her trice, she was roused to her consciousness. That Nalini's son Neda was very dear to her. The boy would bring a lot of hibiscus flowers and offer Pushpanjali, just a 3-year-old boy or so. But when Nalini was away, there was, I think, without taking mother's permission, she went away. Amake pranamu kore galo na, ma bollen. And that boy died. Because there was a curse. Her earlier child would not see the next child. That was the condition. She was expecting. So mother was just weeping like an ordinary village woman. Morning onwards, the moment news came, everything, see, mother is not doing it, the whole household comes to a standstill. It was evening, and someone quietly went and said, Ma, Sandhya, bas. In a moment, everything changed. She went, washed her feet, changed the clothes, offered the Sandhya offering to Thakur, immersed in sadhana. It's Vedanta in action, not Vedanta only in books, sitting comfortably and only lecturing neti neti. No, living Vedanta. One small incident with Swamiji, will close. You all have to go back, I know. So, Swamiji, I think it was in Mrs. Blodgett's house. So, he was standing before a huge mirror. Was it his turban? Was it his tie? Was it his coat? And she was shocked. This person talks of Vedanta day and night, about Atman, and he is so worried about his dress. Like a flash of lightning, the answer came. So you have to go and deliver a lecture. Just unable to bring my mind to the level of the body. I'm struggling. So in various ways, I'm trying to remind myself about the body. That was Swamiji. So Swamiji did not set up this organization just to run school or college or Éire center or anything. It was very clear. The goal is moksha. But the path, that's why there's a slight deviation from the traditional thing, because Shankara was emphatic that the karma has to stop at Chitta Shuddhi. Swamiji did not really differ from Shankara. But he did not say that you have to stop karma at some stage. Swamiji also accepted the idea, but he left it there because he said, when the mind is absolutely pure, you don't have to deliberately bring any activity to work. The mind automatically soars to a higher level of consciousness. The activity might continue, but the quality of that activity changes totally. You see, a Brahmagyani taking food, an ordinary taking person, does a Brahmagyani eats Brahman, he also takes food only. The food gets digested through the system only. But the awareness of the Brahmagyani, awareness of an ordinary person is totally different. So the external activities might be the same, but internally they develop a different quality, and that is a difference. That is a real purpose of jnana. The purpose of jnana is not to really run away from the world. Can you bring a qualitative difference to your life? Because the way deforestation is happening, there won't be forest left behind for anybody to go and hide. Where would you go for Advaita? You have to come to Éire Vedanta only. Here he must set. That's what he said. Delirmati was sitting below that famous mango tree in a camp cot. He was talking to those brahmacharis. He was in a very elevated mood. Then Babram Maharaj was going with the plate of worship on the steps to the old temple. They say, "Here is Brahman." He said, Premananda stood frozen in that very place. And all present suddenly felt a tremendous uplift. And after some time he said, "Babaram, you go." Then he could go. That is the power of realization. It's not mere theory or logic or bookish knowledge. So, to kind of sum up, Sri Ramakrishna's Vedanta definitely had all the aspects of traditional Advaita Vedanta, but it was something much more. His concept of Vijnana, how to live in this world beyond that, how a realized person would live, how that can serve as a model for ordinary mortals as means of sadhana. And very beautifully exemplified by mother in her life. She did not speak so much, but she lived and set an example. And Swamiji combined a little of both. He lived and also preached, set in motion a great machinery through which any person in a traditional ashrama, you can never ever aspire to sit so close to a Swami. They will throw prasad at you. So he brought a wonderful admixture or a combination where everyone, irrespective of your station of life, can be a sadhaka, can participate, can be part of it. So every activity can be elevated that can lead you to a higher level of awareness and realization. Ultimately, that is the extraordinary contribution of this Ramakrishna Sarada Vivekananda, where keeping all the traditional ideas intact, they made such beautiful value additions so that the life of every individual can become meaningful. This can conquer the East as well as the West. There is no place, distinction, caste, creed, color, can go beyond religions. This basic idea can be taken up by anyone, can be taken up by Christians, can be taken up by the followers of Islam also. Here, because nothing creedal is being talked about. Swamiji talked so much of Vedanta as an universal religion that we don't have time to talk about that. But all these elements are acceptable for anybody. The idea, each soul is potentially divine, each soul is potentially extraordinary. Forget the word divinity, call it as extraordinary, call it as infinite. Anybody can take it. That is why Ramakrishna, Vivekananda, Sarada are so relevant to this age, to the times in which we live. Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.
So on behalf of us all, I'd like to very much thank Swami Shantatmananda Maharaj, firstly for visiting us, but secondly for sharing with us thoughts that elevate our minds and describing the uniqueness of Sri Ramakrishna and the living Vedanta that was him. And his visit is very brief, but the quality, of course, is wonderful. And so I really thank you so much. The last time I saw Maharaj here was in Delhi in 2020. We had a wonderful time there on Kalpatru Day. And I think many of you will recall the wonderful puppet show that he brought to us. So it seems whenever you visit us, you elevate our minds. Thank you. And I'd call on Swami Shantatmananda, Shanti to give you a small token of our appreciation.
Please, Maharaj.
This reflections penned by Swamiji.
Volume 1, more is to come. The beginning.
In many of these, as we hear that you quieten your mind with meditation and all, and the mind goes off. Has anybody been able to explain the experiential how it happens, and how do you feel that?
Yeah, you'll only get glimpses, hints, because it's not possible to explain. See, Ramakrishna, sometimes he wanted to share very extraordinary things with even his intimate disciples. It was not possible. He said, as if someone is pressing my throat. Why? Because there's a basic contradiction. Because that is a state beyond the indriyas or the senses. There is a transcendental. But our ordinary life is within the domain of senses. So from here, how can you? It's not possible. There is no connect. Like, when many of you are scientists in rocket, it goes. But when it goes beyond the Earth's orbit, there is no coming back. So, the only some maybe, I don't know, some others might have seen everybody knows Ramakrishna, Mother, Swamiji, they simply merge. Now what happens might be, they say, is that your kind of quietness that's beyond words, a kind of peace that is passeth understanding, beyond explanation, a sense of joy that is million times more than all the joys one can imagine. So Thakur bolchen na, ঘি কেমন কি যেমন যে খেয়েছে সে বুঝেছে. If you ask how is ghee, only one who has drunk ghee can say. So even if anyone says also, that wouldn't make any sense to us. Because unless you are a serious sadhaka, nowhere will be able to even get a inkling of it, or understanding is a far cry. So it is not possible. The only thing is, what happens afterwards, such people become very extraordinary. From them, all sense of worldliness, earthliness, sense-oriented behavior, all that completely drop off. And in many places, they develop extraordinary capacity of the mind, etc. Swamiji could, just like that, read like an open book. A famous singer, Emma Kave, came. She had tried to commit suicide several times. She had failed. Finally, somebody told him about an Indian yogi. She came with an appointment. When she came, she opened the door. She saw Swamiji was just sitting in a deeply, that kind of a trance. And there, without even looking at her face, one after that, he was narrating the incidents of his life which she had not shared even with the closest of her friends. And in one meeting, he cured her. My child, you carry such a disturbed atmosphere about you, you start singing again. She was transformed. So they get tremendous transforming powers, and the quality of their life will become totally different. This much we can guess. Beyond that, what exactly is their experience? Obviously, nobody can explain.
So are there any questions on Zoom?
Oh, hello, Zoom. Okay.
Good evening, Swami.
Ah.
Do you think that books are not for the heart? Do you think that?
Books are not for the
Heart.
heart.
The heart.
No, not that way. See, wherever is possible, you have to gather knowledge. But we shouldn't stop there, that's all. You see, anything that makes your understanding clear, books are a help that way. Particularly when you struggle in a spiritual life, sadhana, books can be of help because it will be the shared experience for someone else who has traversed that path. So obviously it will be helpful. But we should not mistaken intellectual understanding for realization. That's the problem. Those who are little ideas oriented or intellectually oriented, they think that they have understood. No, experience is something different.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Swami, good evening.
Ah.
I have another question.
Yeah.
I'm trying to know if maybe now in this age or maybe in the future, could humans be able to now to technologies, to robotics, to IT, and all this sort of technologies that help us to realize God consciousness, not from without, but from within humans. So within the brains of humans. Oh.
No. Science can only improve your existential life. Can give you more conveniences, more advanced mobiles. Even artificial intelligence cannot take you to consciousness. Because all these discoveries happen at the level of senses only. See, there is a basic divide. One of our great Swamis, Swami Gambhiranjay, people always used to ask, Vedanta. No, what is this? Science is science, Vedanta is Vedanta, he would say. See, because there is a basic contradiction in the sense that all these discoveries happen at the level of the senses. Even artificial intelligence happens at the level of intelligence only, na? But spiritual life begins at the level of transcendence. That is, when you go beyond mind only, it's possible. So none of these techniques talk about that. Because scientists are now coming around. Even Nobel laureates like Roger Penrose and others, they are talking about consciousness. Consciousness is definitely a different dimension to existence itself. So discoveries of science can't help you. You can sharpen your intellect, maybe can remove some of the obstacles possibly. Just like if you are given anesthesia, you lose. Are you in samadhi during anesthesia? No. It numbs you. You have no sensation. The test is that how do you come back? See, how do you test it? When you come back the same fool. But if you go to samadhi, you will come back an enlightened person. That's the difference. Otherwise, anesthesia, sleeping pills, all that can give you samadhi. Okay?
Thank you for the feedback.
Thank you. Yes. Offline. There's an offline question, yes.
Is consciousness personal? I can understand that a person...
No. Consciousness is universal.
So...
It's not like my consciousness, your consciousness. Yes. It's all one consciousness only.
So it's a gift.
Yeah. See, the point is, the same electricity runs through everywhere. System. Somewhere you catch it through 100 watts bulb, somewhere 1000 watt bulb, somewhere 5 watt bulb, then to pump, through motor, so many things. See, manifestations are like that. But essentially it is only one power, electricity. Similarly, consciousness is one only.
So if consciousness becomes aware of itself, the personal is lost, or is, you transcend.
No, consciousness is consciousness. We become aware. The person who is practicing, who is doing sadhana, what does it awareness? This awareness is not like, oh, I understand there is a bouquet given. No, it's not like that. That awareness is something where you rid yourself of all that is not conscious, and then only that consciousness remains. So you see, there are not exact words to explain that state of existence. Because whatever you explain, it's only at the level of the senses only, no?
Yes. I can understand that anything that people think about, even if it's themselves, or their senses, or their feelings, or their memories.
No, all that will be there. But,
But they're all objects, aren't they? Because something sees
yeah.
that.
So when you go beyond that, what happens? Once you go to that stage, then there is an an impression that all these are all really, in reality, they have no meaning, no stuff, no credence, so to say. Only that is real. Everything else is. Then you can very easily do away with all that. See, what's our problem? We are not able to do away with anything. Without mobile, we die. So, like that, so many things bind us down. When you realize a different dimension of existence, namely consciousness, then you find that nothing matters. This body goes. If you're terribly sick, what does it matter? Mahaprishna people ask, he was very sick. Maharaj, how are you? Oh, you please ask the sevaks. I don't even remember I have a body. See, all these things, that's why, is there any benefit at all in being spiritual? These are the things. See, the 1,000 things which bind us day and night, supposing you can be free from them, what a high state of life it is. That is the benefit. Spiritual life is not just for just closing the eyes and sitting or anything like that. That would become intensely useful weapon in your hands, tool in your hands.